We knew this day would come. One day, Azur Lane was going to collaborate with an ecchi anime. And that anime is To Love Ru. Today we're going to go over the data mine of the new collaboration event with To Love Ru. It goes by the event name Dangerous Inventions Incoming. We got a lot to go over with this update, but as usual, I'm going to really quickly go over the changes in the game since the last data mine 3 weeks ago for the Tempesta event. In that time period, the only real in-game newsworthy addition is going to be 2 augment modules, one for Shuetsui, which just adds a barrage to her, and one for Neptune. This continues the addition of augment modules for PR1 ships. It gives her evasion and firepower stat, and a nice EHP raising slash, and it upgrades her skill to give her an extra 20% crit rate, an extra barrage, as well as a barrier. This is a pretty strong upgrade, although not as strong as the augment module that Ibuki got. In other news, we're getting another collab. This collab is actually outside of the game, and while I rarely bring these up, this in-person collaboration event is going to be actually in the US. This December, for 2 weekends, the Asayori Maid Cafe is going to be having an Azur Lane event. It's going to be kind of like a pop-up shop where they have Azur Lane themed food and specialized limited merch. This is going to be similar to a lot of the pop-up shops in Japan, like in Akihabara, except this one's going to be in LA. So if you're around the area, I recommend this. Seems like a really cool event to go to. With that, let's head back into in-game content. The next cruise mission pass was announced on the live stream. This has the new paid skin for Wesser and will bring us Giulio Cesare META. While she won't be obtainable until December, her files were added to the game today, so we can go over her really quickly. The first thing I'd like to point out is her fleet tech. This will be the only ship today that actually has fleet tech because collab ships do not get fleet tech. She gives a very nice hit stat when you get her to 120, and given she's an elite meta ship, that might be the only thing you actually use her for. Fortunately, meta ships don't take up dock space anymore. So this meta battleship stats are vastly improved over her Italian version. But while she's improving in pretty much all areas, she's going to lose her torpedo stat because she no longer has that torpedo barrage in this version of her. Her first skill gives her a 70% chance to proc a special barrage every 18 seconds, and enemies hit by that barrage are going to take 10% extra damage. Her second skill is going to give her an increase by 10% to her firepower and her reload stat. She's also going to reduce the penalty you receive for being out of ammunition for the fleet. If you are out of ammo with her in your fleet, you will do 15% more damage than you typically would with that penalty. The first time her HP falls below 60%, she's also going to proc a skill that gives her plus 10% damage for the rest of the battle. Finally, she's going to have her standard meta skill that gives her plus 8% critical damage when she's fighting elite or boss fleets in Operation Siren only. As expected, this ship is pretty weak. You're really just using her to collect on that fleet tech. Alright, with that, let's get into the actual event that comes today. A reminder that the skill training campaign mini event is also coming today. It's going to last until December 12th, in which you'll be able to insta-clear the skill training books 10 times per day, so you should be able to get a lot of those skills upgraded really quickly. Don't forget to do that every day, basically, until the event is over. Also, there will be 2 mini games. The Help Me Lala mini game, which will allow you to get some collab exclusive gear as well as Lala's exclusive augment module, and also the Pipo training, which will give you various rewards as well as Nana's exclusive augment module. And that brings me to the fact that this event is basically exclusive. Things are not going to be rerunning here. There's a lot of new event exclusive items here that very likely will never come back into the game, so we will go over them a little bit later in the video, but make sure you pick them all up. They will never come back. They will most likely be very unique. Additionally, every ship today is releasing with an augment module. That augment module is specific to them. It most likely will be the best in slot augment module for them over the default bases. These are not rerunning. These will not be permanently available. You must obtain them in the event. Do not miss out on the augment modules. If you pick up the ships today and you don't pick up the augment modules, they become much less useful. Don't do that. There's only ever been one other event, a collab event, of course, where augment modules are locked and time gated, and that is super important because I'm certain these augment modules will make these ships usable. Of course, you're going to probably want the gear because that's probably going to be required to run these as well. They also might be relevant outside of this collab too. The gear frequently has been historically. So anyway, just make sure you play this event a lot and get everything because this is your only chance to do it. All right, with my public service announcement out of the way, let's talking about this event a little bit. There are going to be 5 main stages. This is going to be like T1 through T5. There's going to be an SP stage that you can clear once per day and an EX stage as well. There are going to be 5 challenge stages. These are going to be like TTLs-ish. These are going to be very similar to recent collabs like the Senran Kagura collab or the Venus rerun. Basically, you clear them once and you get wisdom cubes. They function as EX, but they don't cost oil and they don't affect your mood. They should be easy to clear through. Gear skins, while not as important, likely aren't coming back either, but they are farmable in the maps. This is pretty standard for collaboration events, but just reminder, you can actually farm gear skins. And there will be special missions to obtain the event medal, which is standard for collab events again. So anyway, that's the event. Make sure to play it a lot. If you're in the US, you have Turkey Day next week, so hopefully use the holiday to gain some runs. If you're not, well, there's still the Black Friday Lucky Bag going on. Make sure to take that up, and the Black Friday event, which has a frame. Anyway, just a reminder to pick up your frame. Those are not particularly new. They happened last maintenance, but they will continue through this one. As usual, we're going to be getting new skins for all of the new ships. None of them will be dynamic or L2D. There will be some other skins, though, that are dynamic at least. No L2Ds in this event at all. There will be a new dorm theme. I don't think I like it that much, but some of the items in it look pretty cool during the live stream. And with all of that out of the way, we finally can get into the newer content for this specific event, To Love Ru. This intro felt a lot longer than normal, as I said earlier, but I'd just like to reiterate, every ship that is new for this event is going to come with an augment module. That augment module you're going to have to obtain from a various way depending on the one that you're going for. That augment module will make the ship better. That augment module is exclusive to that ship and will not be rerun. It is time limited only. Make sure to pick it up. I'm going to review these ships as if they have their augment module on them. Don't miss the augment module. Alrighty, let's get started with Lala. She is an SR heavy cruiser. Stat-wise, she looks oddly enough pretty familiar. Her HP, 5,361, is exactly the same amount of HP that other SR heavy cruisers in collab events have. This includes Asusa from Idolmaster and Yume from Gridman. She does get a little extra firepower than those two, and she does play around with her gun efficiencies differently, but she generally, stat-wise, is going to look very similar to those. Luckily enough, she is going to get a main gun +1, which is very important part of the kit. So this ship looks like a generic SR collab ship, at least as far as the stats go. So let's move into skills. Skill number 1, increase this ship's evasion stat by 15%. Every 4 times this ship fires her main gun, she summons a Go-Go Vacuum Kun, decreasing this ship's damage taken by 12% for 8 seconds. The Vacuum Kun is going to draw in nearby enemies, similar to like the black hole that Bismarck does. The affected enemies are also going to be debuffed. Their firepower, torpedo, and anti-air stat are going to be decreased by 5% for 8 seconds. This is a very good skill all around. We have a lot of things that are going to increase our survivability. We have a little bit of crowd control. We have a debuff going on, and this is coming off of just firing the main guns. So optimally, you're going to want to put a very fast firing gun on her, at least in her main gun slot. But overall, this is a very solid skill, especially when we're talking about a ship that has a main gun +1. So this will be triggering all the time. Skill number 2 is actually a skill that is upgraded by the augment module. Her augment module gives her firepower and hit stats, so super aggressive. It also gives her a special beam that fires every 15 seconds, and that beam is upgraded if Nana or Momo are also in your fleet. Very much aggro. The updated second skill with the augment module is going to increase her firepower and hit stat by 15%. That's on top of the stats that the augment module gives anyway. And then every 20 seconds after the battle starts, she fires an improved special barrage. The damage is based on the skills level, and you decrease the anti-air by 5% and the hit stat by 15% for 8 seconds for all on-field enemies at the time of this activation. It doesn't need to hit. It just triggers every 20 seconds. That's pretty nice. 20 seconds is not necessarily the best timer. It can be really good though in certain fleets with carriers specifically. 3 seconds after the effect activates, you decrease this ship's anti-air by 1% for 1 second. Someone in the comments needs to tell me why that part is there. It's basically a debuff to herself, but it's pretty negligible, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. I'm sure it has some sort of lore theme that makes sense. Let me know in the comments. Anyway, this skill is not as good in my opinion as the first skill, but it is super hyper aggro once you put the augment module on it, and she's going to be able to do a lot of damage with that main gun +1. Overall, this ship's actually pretty solid. This ship will get you through a lot of content. There's nothing bad about this ship. I mean, it's not going to compare with any of the rainbow rarity ships in this area, but as far as an SR goes, this is a very solid, will take care of business ship. I like it. It's got some quirks to it too. The vacuum's kind of cool, so good work. Next up, let's look at Nana. She's an SR destroyer, and man is she squishy. She's like at the health level of Ainami here, and you can tell that she's definitely going to be a torpedo-based ship, but 536 torpedo is kind of puts her around the Yukikaze level. Yukikaze, for the record, is good because of her survivability and skills and all those things. Unless the skills make her really tanky, she's going to be very squishy like Ainami, but nowhere near the level of damage that Ainami does. So we'll see what the skills do, because that will change this whole thing. But as far as an SR destroyer, this looks very basic, and it definitely looks glass cannon-y, but not as good. I mean, default pre-retrofit elite starter ship Laffy is more survivable than this ship, so that's interesting. And Ainami does more damage. So anyway, let's look at the skills. Her first skill is actually affected by her augment module, so we'll talk about that first. She gets torpedo and hit stat for her augment module. That's a good thing. Every 18 seconds, she's going to fire a special beam, and if she has Lala or Momo in there, she's going to have an improved beam. Why her comes out at 18 seconds and Lala comes out at 15 seconds? That's interesting. I guess they probably are staggering them so they don't do it at the same time, but that's interesting. As far as the skill goes, it increases her torpedo stat and hit stat by 15%, so I do kind of like where her hit stat is. And then every 10 times this ship fires her main gun, which is not a main gun +1, she summons an alien animal friend and fires a special barrage. With the augment module, it is improved. Enemies hit by this special barrage take 10% more torpedo damage from this ship. So that is nice. So it actually kind of feels like the submarines, the powerful submarines like Flasher and U-47. She's obviously not that broken. This skill's actually pretty good though. It definitely fits with her glass cannon-y setup so far. Skill number 2, when this ship is attacked, there's a 10% chance to increase this ship's evasion rate by 8% for 5 seconds with an 8-second cooldown. Once per battle, when this ship's HP falls below 30% as a result of damage taken, she's going to heal 20% of this ship's max HP and increase her evasion stat by 15% for the rest of the battle. So this skill is interesting. So this is all about the survivability part. The evasion rate is kind of nice. We do like that. It triggers very similarly to Eldridge, and Eldridge just makes you invincible. It makes everyone invincible. This one gives you a slight evasion rate boost, so significantly worse there. She does have a heal. It comes very low, 30% of 2,000. Like, she's going to be very low on health there. And the heal's big, though, that's for sure. And that can be pretty helpful in PvE, where, you know, you're taking damage much slower in certain situations, especially in, like, mob fleets. But she's not necessarily something you want in a mob fleet, because she is kind of a glass cannon-y torpedo person. She's also going to increase her evasion. We like that for the rest of the battle, so that's nice, and it pairs nicely. So as far as a survivability skill goes, this checks all the boxes. It's going to help. Not going to make her that tanky, but it is going to maybe allow her to survive in some battles and get that first skill off where she gets to kind of boost her own torps. So that is cool. I think she is definitely, there's a lot of ships that are much better than her, and a lot of those ships are permanently available, but she's interesting. And I see a theme here with the augment modules when you're pairing them up with the lasers. So I'm sure Momo has the same thing, and that could be fun. So it's going to be, you know, you pair them all up and you have this laser combo that comes one after the other. So we like that. And so there could be some combos when you're sticking within the To Love Ru universe where this is useful. She's not a bad ship. She can do some damage. The torpedoes are not bad. Next up, we have Momo, who is an SR light cruiser. She's also available in the shop and as a drop ship. When we look at her stats, she actually looks very much similar to Garibaldi, like very much similar in terms of efficiencies and stats. Garibaldi looks a little bit more powerful technically, but they are kind of on the same level. And if you're going to be compared with Garibaldi, that's not a bad place to start for a collab ship at least. Also, unlike Garibaldi, she gets her own augment module right off the gate, which is much better than the default one. It gives her firepower and reload. And big shocker, she gets a laser beam too. Hers fire every 20 seconds, so you can go 15, 18, 20 and just stack them up. Anyway, skill number 1 increases this ship's firepower and torpedo stat by 15% every 8 times this ship fires her main guns. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a main gun +1. She fires a special barrage that is improved when you put the augment module on it. When the battle starts and every 20 seconds afterward, summon an alien plant friend. The alien plant friend persists on the field for 15 seconds and attacks enemies using its own equipment. Its stats change based on Momo's stats and skill level. Once per battle, when this ship's HP falls below 35% as a result of damage taken, she's going to fire a special barrage. So she gets an extra barrage there. Those plant friends, though, they can take aggro, though, and that's really cool. Skill number 2, she's going to decrease the damage she takes by 10%, just a straight damage reduction. If this ship is the front ship of your vanguard, she increases her own anti-air and evasion stat by 10%. If not, then she increases her reload and hit stat by 10%. So I like this a lot. You can switch her up in your lineup depending on which stats you want. Survivability, you put her in the front, which is probably what you want the survivability stats for. Or if you're using her for more damage, you put her not in the front and she'll get the boosts that you want there. When the battle starts and every 10 seconds afterward, you pick one random other ally without a plan execution status and increase their evasion by 5% for 8 seconds, then give that ally the plan execution status. So basically, a minute into battle, you're going to buff everyone's evasion. She's going to buff someone's evasion at the start, and then, she's going to keep picking random other allies. And actually, I misspoke because it's going to be 40 seconds in, I think, because you get it at the start, and then you get 2 at 10, 3 at 20, 4 at 30, 5 at 40, and then she doesn't actually do this to herself. So it's actually 40 seconds in the battle. She can get the whole fleet with an evasion buff. Now, it doesn't actually stay the whole time. It's an 8-second effect, but it is kind of cool she can buff other people's evasion. Every 20 seconds, for 10 seconds, she's going to increase your fleet's damage dealt by 5%. That is a universal fleet increase. Does not have to be Tulavru. 20 seconds might be pretty slow for battleships, but if your backline is full of carriers, it's right where it needs to be, and it's got a great big window there. So even if you have battleships like UVH, you can actually still fit in that window nicely. Also, this trigger is going to grant her and all of the allies that she gave the plan execution status with the earlier part of this effect the following buffs. If the recipient is the vanguard, and this includes herself because she'll always be the vanguard, you restore 2% of the recipient's max HP, their max HP, so it's a heal, and then you increase their firepower and torpedo stat by 5%. We like those. If it's in the main fleet, it's going to heal 2%, and it's going to instead increase the firepower and aviation stat by 5%. So it's really the same skill, except if it's in the front line, you're going to get the torpedo stat. In the back line, you're going to get the aviation stat, which is what you want. That's a good buff too. This is a really cool skill all the way around. It is totally a Yu-Gi-Oh skill because it's a lot of reading, but man, is it cool. You had the damage reduction. You got the flipping her where she is in the fleet to get the different effects. You have the giving boosts to your evasion, and it's totally random. And then you have like the full-on gambit that buffs all their skills for damage. I really like this skill. It's got a lot of things going for it. I think it's pretty good. Is it like game breaking? No, but the first skill is also very solid too. I think Momo is actually really solid too. I think her and Lala actually very much solid ships. And Nana is definitely usable enough. Like the penguin thing is kind of a fun barrage. You can definitely use the three of them together. All of them look very good. The barrages, I like them. This is a trio that I'm actually pretty happy with. Despite it being a collab ship, and I probably won't use them, this is a very good trio, and they are all decent by themselves as well, so you don't have to use them together. They're all unique enough that they're useful. Their stats aren't very unique, but their skills are very unique, so I appreciate them. All right, moving on to the last SR of this event, the battleship Golden Darkness. This was actually probably the ship I was the most interested in coming off of the live stream, so we'll see. She's the only SR backliner in this event. Let's take a look at her. So stat-wise, she sits right in the middle of all of those basic, generic SR battleships where they're that, which is not bad. Those are decent. Like, she's right on par kind of with Nagato is what her stat line kind of reminds me of with the efficiencies. Nothing peaks out there. There's just little tweaks that are different. So really, she's going to be made in the skills. So let's take a look at those. The first skill is actually upgraded by the augment module. Her augment module gives her firepower and hit stat. Those are the ones we want on a battleship. Also, she gets a slash attack every 30 seconds, but she's a backliner. So I don't think I've ever seen a slash attack from an augment module on a backliner. So that's pretty interesting. Anyway, skill number 1, she increases this ship's main gun efficiency by 20%. That's actually really, really nice. She has the same efficiency as like Nagato, but then she just gets to boost it off of the skill. So that's nice. When the ship fires her main gun, so she's a barrage battleship, she selects one random enemy and activates one of the following effects based on the enemy's armor type. So that's very interesting. The enemy that she's selecting off this skill is not necessarily the same one that she's targeting with her salvo, so we'll see. But I'm very interested. If the enemy is light armor, she's going to fire a special barrage that has HE shell damage. That's great. And then it decreases the speed of enemies hit by 20% for 6 seconds. So it has a slow. It's a very mild slow. 20% is not big, but it is a long slow. It's 6 seconds. It's not like one of these 2 seconders or 1.5 seconds. It's a long slow. If it's a medium or heavy armor enemy, then she's going to have her barrage fire AP shells, and enemies hit by them are going to increase their firepower based damage taken by 5% for 6 seconds. So her barrage is basically guaranteed on fire, and then it's going to pick the best shell based on the enemy armor type. I love it. I love it. It's so cool. And we already got the main gun efficiency. This is a really cool barrage battleship. And I haven't even got to the other skill yet. I don't know if it's any good, but I like this skill a lot. It's not like amazing. There are better barrages, but I just like the fact that this skill is guaranteed to go off and it's guaranteed to pick the shell for your barrage that you're going to need. I like it all around pretty much on this skill. Even though it's not the best ever, we weren't expecting that for a collab ship. There's a UR event in a month. I'm happy so far. Skill number 2, increase this ship's firepower and hit stat by 15%. Nice, we like those stats. 30 seconds after the battle starts, that's a little long. And the first time each battle when this ship HP falls below 50% of damage taken. Okay, that's okay though, because that means it's going to basically go off guaranteed. Then she activates this effect, restore 8% of this ship's max HP and increase this ship's evasion and anti-air stat by 15% until end of battle. Okay, so I mean, we like the raw stat increase at the top of this. The heal is all right. This reminds me a lot of Monarch's heal for some reason. In fact, a lot of this ship kind of reminds me of Monarch, which for the record, Monarch was an amazing ship for very early part of Azur Lane's game. Obviously, she's been power crept a lot, but I like this ship. I mean, this is very usable too. All 4 SRs are very usable right now. I think Nana's probably the worst of the 4, and Lala is probably the most useful outside the pack. But all of them are decent. All of them are fun, and they can all be used together. I like it. Let's get into the elites. All right, our first elite is a battle cruiser, Haruna. And as with most elites, especially elite battle cruisers, her stats leave much to be desired. But let's see if the skills can make her reasonably good. Before we get into all the skills, though, this augment module really stands out to me as well. It gives her firepower and hit stat. That's good. But every 20 seconds, she uses an emergency fire extinguisher and deploys a smoke screen that extinguishes all regular burn ailments for all your ships in it, and the smoke screen lasts for 5 seconds. So she gets rid of fire in a smoke screen as part of the augment module. Awesome. Very unique. I like it. Is it worth running an elite battle cruiser? Probably not, but I like it. All right, let's look at the skill that it enhances. When the battle starts, mark an ally that's not this ship with the lowest HP and restore 5% of her max HP. That's a good heal. The recipient of this effect has her damage taken decreased by 8% until the end of the battle. And once per battle, if her HP falls below 20% as a result of damage taken, there's a 10% heal again. Once per battle, when the recipient of this skill receives a healing from any source other than this skill, increase the recipient's damage dealt by 5%. This is a really good heal. We found a healing battle cruiser that might be worth it. So when you're starting, you're just going to heal the lowest HP. This is going to be not necessarily that useful in anything but a mob fleet, but in a mob fleet, after you've fought a couple battles and your HP at the start of the battle is below 100%, you're going to get a heal right off the bat. It's only one ship though, so that's kind of interesting. The recipient is going to get just all the health, no damage reduction, and then she's going to get a zombie skill added on to her. If you can heal that ship again somehow, it's going to give you extra damage increase. I really like this skill because what you can do is you can put a very squishy ship that can deal a ton of damage that maybe isn't surviving too well over multiple battles, and you can just have her heal up, get the damage reduction, heal up again. If she heals up again by someone else, which is usually pretty easy to do these days, you can give her a damage increase, which is probably perfect for that situation because she's probably squishy and you want to bring her in the fleet because she does damage. I think this skill is perfectly built for being like, I'm bringing one really squishy DPS ship, putting it in the middle of my fleet. It's dying in the mob a little bit more than I'd like, and we're just going to heal it up and call it a day. And yeah, there's a lot of applications for this. I like it. It's also not on a carrier. Having a decent heal not on carriers there. It is interesting though, because it's only when the battle starts. It gets a little weird, I guess, if you start the battle with 100% HP, which a lot of times you will. At least one of the battles you will, but I do like this skill. Let's move on to the other skill. When this ship fires her main gun, there's a 70% chance to fire a special barrage. Not 100, but most elites are still RNGing their barrages. The SR ships tend to not anymore, but they used to, so, you know, this isn't too bad. 70% is all right for an elite. Once per battle, when this ship's HP falls below 80% as a result of damage taken, or when an enemy gets within 80 units of this ship, that's actually a good distance. Like, 80 is not that close. And she's a backliner, so the 80 makes sense, I guess. This ship gains the following effect until the end of the battle. I love these, like, effects that just stay the whole battle. There's no cooldown on these. Nice. Decrease the load time of this ship's main guns by 20%. Okay. Decrease her main gun's damage dealt by 10%. Oh, okay. I don't like that as much. Increase the activation chance of the above special barrage by 30%, which makes it guaranteed. It's 100% now. When this ship fires her main guns, throw an emergency fire extinguisher that inflicts armor break at the enemy that's hit. Okay, so she gives armor break as part of her barrage. She has a fire extinguisher that's getting rid of, like, what? And that's part of her augment module. She has a guaranteed barrage, actually, if you have her fall below 80% damage taken. It's actually pretty easy to get below 80% health. Or just 80 units of the ship. That's also very easy. And it just does it for the whole battle. So it pretty much triggers all the time. This will trigger every battle. It might not trigger immediately at the start of the battle, but it's there. I don't necessarily like the main gun damage dealt reduced by 10%, especially since she doesn't look like she's going to be dealing a lot of damage to begin with. But the cooldown reduction is nice. 20% is probably not enough to make this like super great, but I like the fact that we give armor break and we give heals. This is such a fun like support ship, like utility support ship. I really like the design of this ship too. All right, somebody's after my heart here with these kits. This is a fun kit. Sad it's on an elite ship though, because this had some SR stats. I'm bringing this ship around a lot. In elite stats, I'm going to have to think twice, but I at least am thinking of bringing an elite ship, an elite battle cruiser, so that's something. You're giving up a lot of DPS by going down to an elite battle cruiser, so I probably won't use it because this game definitely prefers, you know, more damage up front, but this is a fun ship to use and definitely usable as an elite battle cruiser. I'm just going to reiterate that. All right, let's move into our last ship, the elite aircraft carrier Yui. She is an accumulation reward, so oftentimes these are the worst ships. Right off the bat, I see a very interesting plane setup. 2 fighters, 3 dive bombers, 3 torpedo bombers. It's kind of funny because if you told me this like two years ago, this would have been a really great setup because you wanted to get rid of the fighters. But as we start to get these really good fighters, this is not necessarily like strictly better because sometimes you do want the fighters, but it's an interesting loadout, that's for sure. She's a torpedo bomber focus. Her stats aren't great, but they are enough where I'm a little bit nervous she's not going to be a utility aircraft carrier because she looks like she's trying to deal damage from her stats, but let's confirm that with the skills. Her augment module gives her aviation and hit stat. Those are good stats. Her effect is actually she increases the Vanguard's evasion and firepower by 5% for the whole battle. So she's just a straight buff if you have that augment module on her. So I can somewhat take back that support comment because she literally has an augment module that gives a universal buff to the Vanguard. It's small, but it's permanent and it is useful. So we like that. Like I said, probably not worth running an elite carrier, but it's a start if there's some good skills down here. So her first skill is actually enhanced by the augment module. So let's look at it. Every 10 seconds, 70% chance to fire a special barrage. If the ruler shells from this barrage hit the same enemy 3 times, it inflicts armor break to the enemy and increases their aircraft damage taken by 5% until the end of the battle. When the handcuff shells from this barrage hit an enemy, decrease that enemy's speed by 15% for 3 seconds. When this skill has inflicted armor break 3 times or more, increase this ship's aviation by 10% until the end of the battle. So I think that's so funny that the whole upgrade to this skill is inflicting armor break 3 times, which each time needs to have the same enemy be hit 3 times by the same shells in the barrage. So it's not necessarily the easiest thing to trigger. And all you get for this is a 10% stat boost to aviation stat. Like, don't get me wrong, we'll take it, but like, that is a interesting upgrade. It's a very minor upgrade. The actual skill itself is not bad. I like armor break off a barrage. I like a slow. The slow is very minimal. It's not for a long time, but it is technically a slow. So, you know, it's checking the basic boxes. You know, it's all right. It's an all right skill. It's not going to make up for the other things. But anyway, let's move on to the second skill. Increase this ship's anti-air stat by 10% and decrease your whole Vanguard's damage taken by 5%. Okay, utility. When any other ship in your fleet is attacked, 30% chance to launch a special airstrike with a 20-second cooldown. It's 30% chance to launch an airstrike anytime any ship in your fleet is ever attacked. That's basically going to trigger every 20 seconds. I mean, it's just not going to be something you can plan on. I don't know. It's got some fun things. It's got some like universal things that I'm just like, it just goes everywhere and it's fine, but it's on a very, very weak base ship. I mean, it's a elite aircraft carrier that got over 400 aviation. So yay. This is probably the worst ship of the event, but it's still more serviceable than a bunch of other elites I've looked at in past data mines. So overall, all 6 ships look usable. I think this aircraft carrier is probably the least, but all of them look pretty usable. I think the elite battlecruiser might even potentially make a fleet of mine at some point for some fun. I think Lala's actively just decent. I think that depending on how that vacuum can be used for the suction, she might just see play. I think Nana's the worst SR. I think she's a tier below the others. But I really do think that like Momo, especially if you can get those plants to like drive away aggro, is pretty good. And Darkness is not bad. There are so many other good barrage battleships that she could be overshadowed. And theoretically, there's no synergy to adding her. Like, you know, Momo has synergy with Lala, right? Because of the way their augment modules work. Not so much with the Darkness. But Darkness has got just such a cool kit from the augment module all the way down. It's very cool. So, I mean, if you're going to run the other ones, you might want to stay in theme and run her as well. She's not bad. If you're a new player and, well, there's a UR event coming up soon, but if you're a new player though, like there's nothing bad about this event to stock up on and level up on, and it'll get you through a lot of things. Like it's a very, very solid set of kits in this event. And we haven't even got to the gear yet. We did all the augment modules, but let's look at gear because there's a lot of equipment that are coming here too, and I'm interested in that. So let's move on to gear. There are 7 SR auxiliaries coming from this event. They're all auxiliaries. They're all SRs. There are 7 of them. So let's go. First things first, we'll start with this bright halo looking thing. It's got the standard SR 640 HP. That's the gold standard, pun intended. It's got no skill though. I mean, it puts a light out. Doesn't do anything. There are so many other things that have the exact same stats that give a skill that is useful. This is forgettable. Unless you really want that light and you want to play around with that. And like I said, it's never going to come back, so might as well pick it up. But this one, probably one of the more forgettable ones of the 7. Moving on to the next one. This Boom Boom Speedy BD gun thing, it gives 35 firepower, which can go on a bunch of things in the Vanguard. That is a rare thing to have. In fact, there's only one other item ever, and it was a collab event item that you cannot get again. So this item gives 35 firepower, just like the dynamic cannon. So this is something you're definitely going to pick up, because there are times where I've wanted to have 2 dynamic cannons. This is basically a second version of that. In fact, the dynamic cannon's a little bit better though, because the dynamic cannon actually does something. It fires a special support barrage. This actually just changes the size of the characters on the screen, makes them a little bit bigger, purely aesthetic. I know a bunch of people are going to want to have them look bigger. I mean, it's kind of funny. And for the record, 35 stats for firepower that you can put on a main gun +1 destroyer that's firepower based, they're going to love that. So it's definitely an item you're going to want to pick up for that stats alone. And who doesn't want to make their ship girls look a little bit bigger? Those chibis are a little bit small, aren't they? Next up, we have this equipment that looks like an eye in a TV or a clock or whatever, and it is pretty much only equipable by, your standard firepower based backliners. It's got 53 firepower and 11 hit stat. This is exactly the same as the last collab item, NA, from the Atelier Ryza event, and that one barely, if ever, sees play anyway. This one's probably not going to see play either. It doesn't really have anything that sets it apart, but it is another item that is going to get you firepower stat for your backline, but there are better generic options that you're going to use, and I don't really see any reason to use this. The other one you could at least argue you'd use in a all Atelier Ryza fleet, maybe. This one I don't particularly see using. So 1 for 3 so far. Let's move on to the next one. The Hum Listening June. This is an interesting one. So there's 18 evasion and 28 hit stat. Those are not very good stats, but the skill is kind of intriguing. It gives basically a 3.5% increase to hit stat for 50 seconds into the battle. So it's not permanent. It's just the beginning of the battle, but it's most of the battle. But it doesn't even make up for, like, you can do the math. Like 3.5% is not a lot of hit stat. The highest hit stat ship in the game is Halford, and it doesn't even have 250. So like 3.5% of like 250, which is, it's actually technically less than 250 because no ship has 250 yet. You're looking at like high end and extra 8 hit stat. So let's assume you put 8 extra hit stat into this. Then okay, great, you're at 36 hit stat. Well, you can just get 18 evasion and 44 hit stat with an SG radar. In fact, the Fairy Magic poster is strictly the best item in this regard. Obviously, that one's a little bit harder to come by, but an SG radar is very easy to come by. So I don't particularly see this seeing any use. It's only for 50 seconds too, and then it goes back down. So unless I'm misreading something, unless this is like an increase to the hit stat of your whole fleet, then we can start talking about it being much better. But the way that I read this is it's only giving it to the ship it's equipped. And if that's the case, this is a very forgettable item. Next up, we have the Hee Overtime, which is an item that gives 29 hit stat and 20 firepower. So that's interesting because that's exactly the same stat line as other collaboration items like the Bubble Bullet or the Ninjutsu Scroll. Interestingly enough about this item is it is generally better because its skill is generic. The other two have skills that are only applicable to their specific collaboration event, but this one is actually universal. Every 20 seconds, you're basically going to increase the damage by 1%. It's nearly negligible. It can actually stack 3 times. So you can get up to 3% by 60 seconds into the battle, which if you're fighting that long, an extra 3% is probably not going to make a difference. It's technically better than the other ones, but it's so negligible. Now, interestingly enough, you might ask, like, why don't people use those stat lines? Well, they typically don't use them because you have the Fumo radar, which is strictly better in stats, but the Fumo radar has a little bit of restrictions. It cannot go on destroyers and it can't go on frigates. So if you're trying to, put this on a destroyer or a Tempesta ship, you can't use the Fumo. But for every other ship, the Fumo is strictly better, and this skill is pretty worthless, but in the off chance that you want to equip this on a destroyer or a sailing frigate, and sailing frigates have like their own items that are good. So I don't know. On the off chance you want to do that, you could use this item, and it is better than the other 2 items in the game. So is it best in slot? I mean, maybe technically, but it's not particularly amazing, but it is unique, so you're going to want to take it. It is strictly better than the 2 other ones unless you're trying to run their specific collab fleets. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and say that that's 2 of 5 that are useful. So next up, we have the Mr. Kanji Cuisine 15, which is actually using the 590 layout. This is what the Pearl tiers uses, not the 640 standard that you'll see with a lot of items these days. It actually adds 2 luck, so that puts it exactly the same stat line as the Pyoko Pyoko, which was a collab item from the Kazuna AI event. That was a while ago. This one actually has a heal, an interesting heal. It's 1% heal every 20 seconds, stacks 3 times, and it's like close to being there, but probably not usable. So you're giving up 50 HP right off the bat, and you're going to gain 2 luck, and then you got to basically hope to get the HP back. So on the first heal, if your ship has 5,000 or more HP, you can actually get it back. But if your ship has 5,000 or more HP, you're probably not going to need to equip an HP item on it, right? You're not going to equip this on Musashi, but you could really get a lot of heals off of Musashi, but you're just not going to equip it. You're going to equip this on a weak destroyer, and that 1% will probably get you back there, 40 seconds, but you maybe break even at 20 if you're lucky, and then 40 is where you start getting that boost. And a lot of these items that have 640 HP right off the bat have a skill that's good, like a shield or, a boost to the stats that is totally worth it. And this one's literally skill is just kind of making up for that. I guess technically you got the 2 luck, but 2 luck's pretty negligible. So I don't see this seeing a lot of play. It's close enough to the top tier stuff that if you don't have a lot of the top tier stuff because they were event exclusive and they're not really, easily and readily available, this one's close enough where you won't notice too much of a difference. In theory, there are some situations where you would want this one, like any of the skills that require another skill to trigger the heal. Like we just had one in this event, actually. This is a way to artificially get a heal on a lineup that doesn't have the heal naturally. So we like that. It's, I think, better than the repair toolkits. So that's an upgrade. I think it's usable enough. It's not best in slot. I'm going to give it a half. I'm going to say we're 2.5 out of 6 because I would definitely not want to miss this for the record in case like more synergies with heals come out and stuff like that. But I don't think right away it's going to take over some of the other options like the 640 that gives you a shield. All right, last up, we have the Lai Hideout. This has the stat line I like. It's got 34 evasion and 5 speed. That's exactly what Cosmic Kicks is. Cosmic Kicks is one of the best items in the game. It is so good. So we basically got another Cosmic Kicks. So this would be like your third, because you theoretically could have 2 Cosmic Kicks right now if you played the original and you got the other one. So this is the third one. So you could theoretically have your whole fleet with Cosmic Kicks. And this one actually has a really good skill too. Cosmic Kicks only changes the type to being a Mew ship, which 99% of the time does not matter. But this skill actually matters. When the ship takes 25% or more max HP worth of damage, it becomes invincible and avoids all damage for 1.5 seconds. It's a once per battle trigger, but basically you just get invincibility when you take 25% damage. That's something you can trigger very often and then heal all the way back up. It's 1.5 seconds at the right time is just perfect. And at the very baseline, an item that didn't really have a skill that was usable was using the stat line that this has. This item is best in slot. Pick this up. Do not miss this. If you miss this, you will be very sad for a very long time. This is not going to rerun. You want this item. This is like, I saved the best for last accidentally, I think, but like this is a must pick up best in slot item. Like invincible, speed, evasion, everything that you want in a Vanguard item is sitting right here. Pick this up. Absolutely. So out of 7 items, literally half of them, because we're at 3.5, I thought were useful. And the other ones you're going to pick up because you want to have a collection, and they should all be easy enough to pick up. But yeah, anyway, we have one that's an absolute must pick up. We have 2 of them that are like pretty good and you want to have them as an option. You have a third one that potentially could be good in the future, has some synergies with very niche things that, warrant making sure you pick up. And the other 3 are collection, but might as well collect them if you can. But yeah, the item set here looks cool. I mean, even the ones that are not useful meta-wise, like you change the size of the ships that you have, like that's cool. You make the enemies larger. I like that. Like, even though it might not be the best in, like, I don't know, there are fun things. I like the set of equipment. In fact, I just like this whole kit, from the equipment in general to all the ships in general to the augment modules. Generally pretty good. I think this is, as far as designing kits that go together, this is a very good job. I think a lot of these are really good. I don't think there's anything that's like busted where if you start the game 3 months from now that you're like, oh no, I can never get that ship, that you'll be problematic, or oh no, whatever. Well, this last item I think is the only thing that if you start in like 3 months, you'll be like, oh no, what happened to that item? I can't get that. But other than that item, I think everything else in this event is really, you know, good, but not like meta defining, which is exactly how it should be. No problems there. So anyway, this is a long video. There's a lot to go over, and I appreciate those of you who stuck through it all. If you want to stick through more of me and bear with me more, I'm going to be streaming this event later, so be on the lookout for that. I'll make an announcement, and we're going to go through this event and try to pick up as much of this as we can. So thank you guys for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys next time.